Hi, my name is Susanne Boetius and I'm a researcher at Lund University in Sweden.
And I'm Malin Åkerström and I'm professor here at the Department of Sociology, Lund University.
We are the authors of the article Revealing Hidden Realities, Disclosing Domestic Abuse to Informal Others, published in the Nordic Journal of Criminology, and winners of the prize Best Article 2020. The topic of our article is the initial process when abused women in close relationship disclose their violence to others.
And we know from previous research that it takes a long time for women to do this. And before they tell the police or social authorities, they have told friends or families or neighbors about this. But this is not something they do very fast, usually anyway. For most women, there's a long period of time when they keep the abuse secret. So we were interested in how come that they tell and when they tell and who they tell. So that's what our article is about.
The study is based on interviews with 21 Swedish women abused by a cohabiting partner, a boyfriend or a husband. All women had turned to centers in Sweden for abused women. Most of the women had filed a police report against their partner regarding violence in close relationships. At the time of the interview, the women were between 27 and 55 years of age, and all separated from the perpetrators. Some of the women had new partners, and some of them were single. Some had children, some had not. Most of the women worked or studied. Most of the women were born in Sweden, and all of them spoke Swedish. One of the aims of qualitative research is to capture variations in experiences, and our study provides this. For some women, their relationship with the abusive man lasted only a couple of months. For others, it lasted many years, as many as 20 years. The length of the time from the abuse to the disclosure varied also, from only a couple of hours up to 18 years, from the first violence episode to the first disclosure.
The interviews with the women were part of a larger project that was financed by Forte, a Swedish research council. And the name of that project is Call the Police, a study of social networks' responses to domestic violence. The research question in that big project was what happens when a third official party gets involved in the interaction in a social network. When the family gets to know about this, or when neighbors maybe call the police, then what happens with the neighbor and the woman? What happens with the children when someone reports the violent incidents to the police? So that was our research question. So the theme of this article, the first disclosure, was not part of that big project. It was a result of serendipity, that is unexpected findings. And we came across it because the women themselves talked a lot about when they first confided in others, that is informal others, friends, family, etc. And it turned out that this was very important for them. So we decided to continue to research this particular question.
When we discovered and got struck by the fact that the women gave so much importance to the first disclosure, we read through the transcripts again. We coded them according to who she told, when she told, how she told it, and in what situation she told. When sorting the data, we developed two major sub-analytical dimensions: planned and unplanned disclosures. Extracts from the interviews were then sorted into two of these sub-dimensions and then further categorized into sub-levels, which we discuss in the article.
The decision to tell others were not always a result of a deliberate decision. On the contrary, it was often a consequence of an unplanned happening of some sort. When the women revealed their previous hidden realities, it was often a result of situational demands. And this could be that they were threatened, they were scared for their life, so they called someone or texted someone. Sometimes it was a result of being so emotionally stressed after a violent incident, so that if they met someone they trusted afterwards, who might have asked them, why are you so upset, or has something happened, then they might burst into telling about the incidents. And a third situation when they told in this unplanned way was when they were confronted by others, like a daycare staff who told that about the children, that they had said that my father abused my mother or hit my mother this morning or something like that. Well, one example of these unplanned disclosure was Anne, who had been abused for several years. She's in her 30s, and one evening her partner had beaten her very, very badly, and she took refuge into the bathroom. She locked herself in, and then she texted a colleague. So she said, I couldn't make a call because he could hear it. So I texted my colleague and I explained my situation, and so she called the police.
But some first disclosures were the result of a well-deliberate plan, well thought upon on beforehand. Who they told, when they told, and what they told were all things they had considered before. They talked about plans being made so they could put themselves in safety, their family and friends, pets in safety. One example of this is provided by Ebba. She was making a long-term plan for leaving her boyfriend. She was convinced that the only way she will get out from the relationship alive was to fly and hide. To be able to escape, she needed to have a plan so her pets could be safe and her boyfriend's children would be safe during the time that she would leave. She described how she kept the violence hidden from her family and friends during this plan, so her boyfriend wouldn't raise suspicions. And at a time when she needed their help, in this case, she needed help renting a car so she could do the escape. Then she decided she needed to include her family and friends. Ebba said, and that's when I finally told. Because we got an escape car to me. It's all about getting the children to safety, because he will get them directly when I leave, and me and the pets to safety. So it was a long process. It was not just like, now I get out. There are differences in the telling of the unplanned and planned disclosures that call for further analysis. We noted that the planned disclosure stories were more detailed and more specified. It involved plans for leaving the partner and for what to do in the future. And the narrator presented herself as being in control of being the victim of abuse.
The women also described how they had thought about who they would tell, because telling would have consequences. Selecting who to tell involved, of course, reflections about who would be sympathetic and who would be helpful. But it was also a question of reflecting how it would influence the future in terms of whether the people one told knew the abusive partner or had a close relationship with him. And of course, like a mother-in-law would be such a case, and also close friends, and sometimes close friends to both the woman and the man would be may be questionable. So sometimes the women decided to tell people they did not have a close contact with. But those who wanted help for a longer time or some deeper sympathetic relationships, they would tell close friends or families, and especially the mothers were often very important, the mothers of the abused women.
Qualitative studies of how informal others gets along with troubles has been discussed from the perspective on how it's received by others. Trouble tellers often expect the others to take their side and to be sympathetic with them. That was also the case in our study, even though this is not always the case. When Anne texted her coworker called the police. And when Ebba asked her sister and her friend for help to escape, they helped her.
But telling others could also involve problems and complicate social relationships, as when women told someone who then gave unwanted advice. And this could imply being told to leave the man or being told to report the incidents to the police. And at times these women were not ready to do that. In other cases, some, very few, but some social support people wanted them to stay in the relationships. And that was also at times unwanted advice. So it's not, most of the women got help and got support, but telling could also mean that things got complicated in their relationships.
Our study illustrates various accounts women have when they reveal hidden realities to others, not only to whom, but also in which situations. These complicated interactional and emotional processes are important because they constitute the very first step of making abuse visible to others. Thank you for listening.